Hello, it's Dawn Michelle from Boho Tarot, and today we're going to be taking a look at the re-release of the first edition of the Starchild Tarot. So we're going to take a look at some of the cards, but I'm also going to show you the first reading I did with this deck because I think it was really important to me making a connection with a deck that I wasn't quite sure of to begin with. When Danielle Noel announced that she was doing a re-release of the first edition, the original first edition, because I guess there have been a couple of variations on this deck. I went back and forth about it, chatted a little with Lisa, and finally decided to go ahead and get it because I know a lot of people love this deck. And to be perfectly honest, I have every other deck that by this creator, with the exception of the Starchild Tarot line. So I don't have any of the Starchild Tarots, the Akashic version, or I think there was a bordered and a borderless and all that. I don't have any of those. So this is my first experience with this deck. I do, however, have her book, the Book of Tarot, and I do quite love it. It's one of my favorite guidebooks. And as far as I know, it does use the majority of the imagery from this deck. I, of course, have the Moonchild Tarot, which is another one that I've shown frequently on my channel. So this particular deck, there were two different boxes, the original teal box, which I didn't get, obviously, and I went for the, I think this was called the rose or the rose petal one. This one I felt just matched all of my other stuff so much better. It matched my book, and I just really liked it. Beautiful touches, as we can see here on the box. We have all the symbols, and then on the back here we have some of the cards, and then of course the title of the deck. So let's go ahead and open it and jump in. It says in the inside, "We are all stardust." So I think that's quite lovely. Just little touches like that are really nice. So it does come with a little guidebook. But really what I'm interested in is checking out these cards. I can tell you just holding it, this is quite a heavy deck. I do have my Moonchild out here in case we decide we want to do a little bit of a comparison. The card stock is matte and lovely. As you can see, it is bordered. So it does have white borders. And of course we have that matte gold gilding, which I really like. Let's take a look at the backs. They are quite lovely. It looks like they are also reversible. So if you read reversals, that might be something that's key for you. Now, I do have to say that one of the reasons that I have not bought this deck is because a lot of the figures in this deck are very young and very model looking, which has been, I think, an issue for a lot of people as far as I know. But I'm still wanted to go ahead and get this one because, like I said, I have all of her other decks and I kind of wanted to just complete my Danielle Noel collection. We'll go ahead and just take a quick flip through the deck. I've not seen these images outside of whatever's in this guidebook, so I don't know if they are the same. Again, I don't have any of the other decks to compare it to, so we're just going to take a look at this one together. Very much, you know, a collage look. I think that the collage work or the photoshopping, the photo manipulation isn't quite as polished as we saw in, say, the Moonchild, but I think given that this was her first deck, totally understandable. I do quite like this High Priestess. She, again, we're back to that really young and modern look, which isn't always my favorite, but I do quite like the energy of her. I think that she makes a lovely High Priestess. So here we have our Empress. I love all the mushrooms, and I love that she has the kind of glow at her heart center, which is quite lovely. She's also not pregnant, which we don't often see anymore. So here we have the Emperor card, and it's a lion rather than a person, which for me, I tend to like my Empress and Emperor cards to kind of match, to be a pair. So I'm usually not thrilled when I see things like this where we have a person in one and an animal in another. It just kind of, it's just personal preference. I like for them to be a pair. I like for them to be a set. Kind of to feel like they belong together, because to me, the way I see them, they are very much a pair. They are very much a yin and yang, a balance of each other. And to have them be two different species kind of throws that out of whack for me. Lovely card though. The cardstock we'll talk about in a minute. This right here, the Hierophant, this was one of the cards that one of the reasons why I didn't get the deck originally, because I really don't care for the figure in this card. I think the concept is great, but the execution was a little miss for me. Quite beautiful lovers. So this was kind of, I guess, one of the reasons why I decided I wanted to get this deck was because I did quite like this Lovers card. I think it's really wonderful. I do quite like this Chariot with the unicorn. Just, you know, really pretty, very nice representation. So here we have Justice at position 8. So we can see here, this side, one half of the image, if we can see here, is that half of the image there and that half of the image there. So the image is just mirrored on either side, but I think that actually works quite well for the card of Justice because we definitely get that idea of balance. So in lieu of the Hermit, we have Serenity. But I like that she has all the chakra symbols going up her. And here we have the Wheel of Fortune. Again, as you can see, you know, very young, very modern, very fashion magazine look. And I do really love the way that Danielle Noel approaches the tarot. Particularly, you get a really good sense of that in her book. But sometimes the imagery is a little bit missed for me. Lovely Strength card, though. I quite like this Perspective card because I love this sort of galaxy, cosmos flow coming out of her hair or going into her hair, depending on how you're looking at it. Really speaks to that idea of a shift in perspective. And of course, perspective has been changed in lieu of the Hanged Man. So here we have Transformation for Death. I do quite like this card because for me, this card really does speak to that transformative energy where, you know, kind of going into the light, transforming into something else. I think that that's quite lovely. Again, this is another one of those cards that I'm like, if she wasn't there, it'd be beautiful. I'm just not fond of the people. So here we have Temperance. And I do quite like this card. I like the design of it. Definitely get that idea of sort of flow, which I think is really lovely. Here we have Oppression instead of the Devil, which I do actually like this card because I like the quote, I like the cloaked figure with the moon behind it. I think that's really wonderful. So here we have the Tower. I do really like the imagery, and I do like the fact that she's quite disjointed and kind of almost like she's come apart, but now she's in the process of being put back together. Like, I don't feel like she is in the process of being shattered. I feel like all of her shattered pieces are in the process of coming back together, which I think is quite lovely. That could just be my own interpretation. I quite like this Star card. It's very beautiful. I love the sacred geometry in the center. I think that's really wonderful. And I quite like the background image here too. And here we have the Moon. Again, another card that I really do like. Again, the people, not so much, but I really like the idea and the concept behind it. I really like the imagery of it. I love the Sun card. I think it evokes everything that a Sun card should. It's joy, it's happiness, but it also speaks to kind of that more cosmic sun energy too, which I think is really interesting. Here we have the Awakening in place of Judgment. Again, another card without people. And you can see in most of these cards, if you look at them from the design aspect, most of the time the backgrounds are mirrored, which is quite interesting. You can see it in the Sun card. You can see it very clearly here in Awakening. So you can see that both sides of the image are really just mirrored, which creates this kind of cohesion or this kind of center point moving upwards into the universe or into the cosmos, which I think is really interesting. I don't know if that was like intentional. That's just the way it speaks to me. I kind of love this intersection. I generally don't like actually when people just kind of copy paste, flip it around the other way. As a designer myself, that kind of drives my brain a little bit crazy. However, in a tarot deck like this, I think it actually does work because it gives me that idea of the two sides coming together and then flowing upward into the cosmos, which I think is really wonderful and very fitting for a deck like this. I think it actually works really well here. Here we have the World. Again, a beautiful card. I love the pink sands with the world in the background here. Feels more like a removed from the world, as in we're looking at it more in a big picture sense, and I think that's really interesting because this figure's not actually like standing on the world or being a part of the world. They're actually removed from the world, standing in another landscape. And we see the world reflected in the background. So I think that's really interesting. So here we have the Ace of Crystals. I really like the pip style of a lot of the minors in this deck. Beautiful too. 3 here, although I'm not sure of the symbology of the cheetah. So here we have the lovely 4 of crystals. I love that she's in the forest. Beautiful 5. We definitely get that idea of a pip style here. I definitely see a domesticated cat and then like a wild cat. Very interesting. Here we have the 6 of crystals, the 7, lots of sacred geometry going on here, which is always interesting. 8 of crystals. I do quite like this with all the crystals around her. Definitely gives you that sense of sort of foundation. Beautiful 9 of crystals, with the crystals all making the constellation in the background. That's lovely. Here we have the 10. Again, gorgeous 10 of crystals. So here we have the page of crystals, and again, you can see that mirroring of the image there. It's quite interesting. Knight of crystals. I love the starry background behind the trees. She's not on a horse though, which is quite interesting. So we usually see our knights on a horse. Here we have our Queen of crystals. Again, not really sure the significance of the white tiger there. Definitely need to look that up. And the King of crystals. And my complaint with this deck is going to be the same as with the Moonchild, that the kings and queens are very, very young. But it doesn't keep me from using the Moonchild, so it probably won't keep me from using this one. And here we have a beautiful Ace of Swords. Again, you can see that lovely mirroring of the imagery there. It's quite nice. 2 of Swords. The 3 of Swords. Looks like her dress is made out of some kind of crystals. Quite interesting. 4 of Swords. So here we have the 5 of Swords. I love the cosmos look in her dress. That's really nice. The 6 of Swords. Can't say I'm overly fond of that one. Beautiful 7 of Swords. Again, no people. Love that. Gorgeous pip style. The 8 of Swords. Interesting that she's not blindfolded. So she definitely, and she's already got her hand on the sword. So that's quite interesting. Different take on it. Here we have the 9 of Swords. Again, another beautiful pip style card. The 10 of Swords. I do quite like this card. I think it's executed well. I love the swords all around her. I love that they're not in her back as well. They're around her. We get this whole sense of it. We get the idea of the 10 of Swords, but she's not being impaled by them, which is really nice. And I love the glow up here. Kind of like speaks to that sort of Palladian energy. So here we have the Page of Swords. Interesting that we have 3 figures instead of just 1. The Knight of Swords. This is very reminiscent of the Fool card in the Moonchild. It's quite interesting. The Queen of Swords. See all the eyes moving upward. The King of Swords. Again, very, very young. Beautiful Ace of Wands. Love all the colors and the geometric shapes. 2 of Wands. 3 of Wands. Like she's reaching out for those wands. Quite interesting. Beautiful 4 of Wands. It's quite lovely. 5 of Wands. It's a very striking card. Here we have our 6 of Wands, and I do quite like this card. I think she's beautiful. I love that she has the glow behind her and the 6 wands, one of which she's about to grab hold of. I think that's lovely. Quite like the color on that card too. Here we have the 7 of Wands, again with another tiger. I need to look and see if there's some significance to that, because there's been several large cats in this deck. The 8 of Wands. I quite like that 8 of Wands. Feels very much like a coven coming together to create magic. Lovely. Gorgeous, very pippish 9 of Wands. Love that. Love the way they're all connected together. It's really beautiful. 10 of Wands. Our Page of Wands. This time we have a dog. Very interesting. The Knight of Wands. I feel like this is the first male knight we've seen. Not a lot of masculine figures in this deck. Our Queen of Wands, again, she has a dog as well. Love this little geometric shape behind her. That's quite lovely. King of Wands. Again, interesting that there's two figures instead of just the single king. Here we have our cups. So we have the Ace of Cups. Interesting that the Ace of Cups has crystals in it when there's a suit of the crystals as well. That's quite interesting. The Two of Cups. This one feels a bit reminiscent of some of the cards in the Starseed Oracle. The same kind of energy. The cups really don't stand out as first and foremost. I like the rainbow behind them, but you really kind of got to look for them. They're not like super apparent. And Three of Cups. And I quite like this one. They stand out better. Each of the cups has crystals, which is really interesting. They really pop on that lovely background. So the Four of Cups. Again, we have another cat. Lovely card. Love this Five of Cups. Beautiful. I'm just all about the landscapes in this deck. And I love the cups the way they're like shadowed in that card. I think that's lovely. This is a quite nice Six of Cups. Again, the cups are shadowed more like a silhouette, but they're glowing in this one, which is really interesting. So you compare that to your darker, more kind of when we see the Five of Cups is like that kind of emotional disruption. We see the cups as dark. And here we see them, the Six of Cups, we're moving on from that emotional upheaval. So we have these lovely, brilliant kind of cups that are kind of a glow. It's quite nice. Seven of Cups. The Eight of Cups. Again, beautiful Pip style cards. Those are definitely my favorite in this deck. Lovely Nine of Cups. 10 of Cups here. Interesting that we have three figures here kind of reminiscent of the Three of Cups, but yet here we are in the 10 with the fulfillment, so that's kind of interesting. Our Page of Cups. Knight of Cups. Again, no horses in the Knight. Queen of Cups. Quite like this little pool she's in here. Little stars reflected. And our King of Cups. So overall, I would definitely say that the cards that don't feature people are definitely my favorite, and that's, I believe, the same thing I said in the Moonchild. I think this Ten of Swords might be my favorite card in the deck. I do really like that Ten of Swords. I can tell you right now that the cardstock is very similar to the Moonchild. It's that really thick, matte, what we call that rose petal finish, but like it's, super thick. Let's take a quick peek at the guidebook. Let's move those over there so we can see. The Starchild Tarot was made for the inquisitive and those who are in the process of waking up, for the light workers, the lovers of magic, and those who are drawn to the stars, for the adventurous, nature lovers, and mystery seekers at large. It's quite lovely. So we have a little bit of an introduction into the deck. Talks about using the deck as a meditative tool for self-healing, divination, and self-exploration. Talks about connecting with your higher self, healing with the tarot, working with the Starchild, cleansing your cards, shuffling, asking questions, couple spreads. So here it talks about the different types of cards, major and minor arcana. It talks about the court cards. So here we have a little bit about the characteristics of the wands, or the fire element, the cups and the crystals. So it talks a little bit about each element, which is really nice, each suit. Some of the changes that have been made in this deck. And then we go into the information on each of the cards. So we have a nice little message, some keywords, and a reverse meaning. So it looks like for the majors, we have a little black and white picture here. In the minors, we have the same information, just a little bit briefer on the message. We still have keywords, and then we have a reverse meaning. It's not quite as detailed as the guidebook for the Moonchild Tarot. However, Danielle has a full book that does really go into some lovely detail. I want to show it real quick just in case you've not seen it, because it does use a lot of the same type of imagery. It has, I think this imagery might be from the Akashic edition, but I could be wrong. You can see here the starseed is different. I believe the magician is the same. Nope, slightly different background. So yeah, there's slight changes in terms of the high priestess is quite a bit different. But what this book also does is have a really similar type of setup where it has information about the card. I mean, it's much more expanded. Information about the card, a message. This one actually has journaling prompts and then a reversed meaning. So I'm just curious. The high priestess. It's the bearer of magic, spiritual teachings, and inner knowledge. That's what it says in the Starchild. In the book, it says the high priestess is the gatekeeper of deep mysteries and hidden truths. This one, I guess, has journaling prompts too. How can I access the sacred wisdom and truth of the universe? How can I access the sacred wisdom and teachings of the universe? How can I raise my own vibration and connect with my higher self? So a little bit different journaling prompts. In between the two of them, you could get quite some interesting journaling prompts going on. And the thing that I like is that it has fairly the same amount of information. I mean, there's a little bit more in the majors, which we tend to almost always see, and not quite as much in the minors, but I really enjoy the interpretations in this book. I use this book quite frequently, especially when I'm like, I pull a card and I've got a block, I'm blocked on a message. This tends to be one of the books that I turn to. Oh, the sun card's the same. Quite like that sun card. So a little bit different information than what is in here, but you can see that, you know, it's pretty similar. I do quite like the information that's in that book, so I definitely recommend it. It looks like they're pretty much, so you can see they are roughly the same height. Starchild is just a tiny bit shorter, and the Moonchild is a little bit more narrow. So very similar. Must be similar cardstock. It feels pretty similar. Actually, this cardstock feels a bit more, this feels a little bit more matte. This feels more like that rose petal finish. I'm curious to see how it shuffles, because if you've watched some of my other videos, you know, as much as I love my Moonchild, I often have a bit of difficulty shuffling it. So the gilding is quite nice on it though. I don't think I'm going to be able to, oh, that's got like, okay, well, I mean, it's not great, and it's got that sort of rose petally, so it doesn't really go back together, but probably going to have to do like I do with my Moonchild and do my usual 4-pile card shuffle. Doesn't bridge very well, but it is also brand new, so we're gonna, you know, it shuffles very similar to the Moonchild, but it has a little bit of a different finish, more of what we call that rose petal finish versus the just generic matte finish. So it doesn't quite bridge back together as well. But you can see when I divide it up into smaller piles, I still can shuffle it, just because it does have that, what we call that rose petal finish. It's sticking. Okay, so I pulled out a few of my favorite cards from the deck. You can see that my favorite pile is actually not very big in comparison to the amount of cards that are in this deck, but And I was really just looking for cards that really spoke to me, that I would really consider a favorite. So I do quite like the cloaked figure in the Oppression, although I'm not really fond of changing the names of the majors, but I do quite like this Lovers card too. I think it's very beautiful. I really like this Moon card because the more I looked at it, the more I thought about it. It kind of has this sort of like universal goddess feel to me. And that's kind of how I was looking at it, like the goddess and the moon and tying that all together. I thought that actually worked really well. Really like the sacred geometry of the 10 of crystals. It's beautiful. Again, that balance that I mentioned in that 8 of crystals. I really like the transformation card, the background of it, the overall look of the card. I think that's lovely. I kind of spent a minute with this High Priestess here because I go back and forth between I like her and I don't like her, but I think overall I like what she's going for. I like the energy she represents. I do quite like the 6 of Wands. I think she's just beautiful. And again, as I mentioned, I really like this perspective card with the little cosmos in the hair. I think that's really a wonderful imagery for that. Again, with just the beautiful pip cards. I do quite like this Chariot. I'm generally not a huge like unicorn person, but I really like the idea of the horse just running free of its own free will. I think that's really wonderful. I do quite like this Five of Wands card, and I think it's actually more the play of colors that I like in the landscape than the actual figure or the wands themselves. I think it's really the kind of desolate landscape that that really draws me in. But in the background, we have like all of this light and life going on in the cosmos, and that just kind of hints to that, you know, better things are coming type of energy, which I really like. I do quite like this Knight of Crystals. I like that she's kind of down in the earth and feels very much a part of the woodland area that she's in, and I think that feels very indicative of the suit of earth. Again, as I've mentioned, this 10 of Swords, just, yeah, this is my favorite card in the deck for sure. Which is usually not something I say. So when I can say a 10 of Swords is my favorite card, that's saying something. So again, with the 8 of Wands, it really definitely has that sort of coming together of the coven to, you know, manifest magic. I think that's really beautiful. As I mentioned, I quite like the Sun card. I love the pip style and the integration of these wands in this 9 of Wands. And then, as I already mentioned, the 5 cups with the black cup silhouette. And then we see like all this kind of heaviness in this forest closing in. But here in the distance, we still, you know, we see that kind of the moon shining through, and we get that sense of hope through that pink. And I think that's really wonderful. So yeah, some cards that I really, really like in this deck. Most of them I'm fairly indifferent about. I think that a lot of these are, you know, particularly the pip style ones, I think they're really nice. There aren't really any cards that I have like a really huge aversion to, except for one. This is the only card that I don't like. And it's really just because to me she looks dead. She looks like a zombie, and that just, it feels so out of place with this deck. But other than that, this is the only card that I really have like a super aversion to, so that's actually not too bad. So I've done my first reading with the Starchild Tarot, and I actually pulled in a card from one of her oracle decks. Now I have combined the Work Your Light Oracle and the Star Seed Oracle into a kind of combined deck where I took out some of the cards that didn't really resonate with me. I have an entire video on that process on my channel, which I'll leave linked in the description box below in case you want to check that out. But I like to often incorporate that oracle deck with my Moonchild, so I thought I would give it a try with the Starchild. And I wanted to do this first reading as sort of a self-care reading because I felt like the energy of the Starchild, and from what I had heard of it, was quite healing, and I wanted to see how it would work for me in terms of a self-care deck. So I just wanted to share this reading that I did because it's not often that I kind of look through a deck and I'm feeling a little, let's be honest about it, like ho-hum about what I'm seeing. And it isn't until I actually work with the cards and until I do my first reading that I really am able to make a connection with the deck. And that has definitely been the case with the Starchild Tarot. I wasn't feeling like really connected to the deck at all on this first walkthrough that I've done of it. And so I decided to take some time off from it. So as I'm recording this, it's actually a different day. It is a Sunday, so that's my self-care Sunday reading. And I decided to pull this one out and do it for my reading just to see how it would work, to see if maybe actually using the deck would help me connect with it a little bit better. Because sometimes that initial connection is just really not there the first time that I flip through the cards. Sometimes it takes me actually working with a deck to make that connection. And that's definitely been the case for the Starchild Tarot, because I just want to say that this particular reading really kind of blew me away. Because without going into too much personal detail, because again, this is a personal self-care reading, I had been feeling, or I have been feeling at the time I'm filming this, a little creatively blocked and kind of a little bit discontent with some of my creative efforts. And I've been really struggling with that the last few days. And so when I did this reading, the first card, I first shuffled my little combined deck, and the first card I pulled was Your Life is a Canvas, Artist, Manifestation, and Creative Accountability. And for me, I was like, yep, there's that deck just calling me out again, as it always does. And it was just a perfect card to pull in this moment, because my creativity is very tied into my sense of self-worth. It's tied into a lot of different aspects of my life, from my professional life to my personal life. It kind of flows through everything. So when I'm feeling creatively blocked or creatively challenged, that's really difficult energy for me to deal with. And it takes a lot of work for me to come out of it, because it is so ingrained into different aspects of my life. So to pull that, your life is a canvas card, like right from the get-go, just really spoke to the heart of what's been going on for me and what I've been feeling. And so then I pulled the Queen of Swords. And this for me is, well, I didn't really assign positions to these readings. Everything on the left is usually for me about what needs to be released, what I need to let go of. What tends to be on the right side of my reading is what I need to really step into, what I need to embrace. And the card that's underneath my main message is usually the kind of the foundation, right? What I need to really get into, what I really need to dig deep into in order to move forward. So that's kind of how I do these readings when I do a 4-card self-care reading like this, that I don't necessarily have defined positions. There's always kind of positions in the back of my mind that this means this and this means that. It is also largely based on context. So if these cards had come up in different positions, I might feel that they represent different things. So for me, readings are a lot about context and a little about spread positions. So having said that, in this first card that I laid, for the Queen of Swords, the line that really spoke to me was, your strength and powers of discernment are needed at this time. And the key word that I really tuned into was perfectionist. So for me, this card was all about, dude, you need to let go of the perfectionism if you want to move forward creatively. So to me, that card that spoke volumes. I do quite like the artwork. I like all of the eyes moving upward from her third eye chakra. Like, that eye really needs to open, and I really need to let the creativity manifest itself. I need to kind of channel it from that higher place versus trying to make it fit into my little perfect little box. And then the card that I got for kind of what's underneath that, what I really need to dig deep into, is the Serenity card, which would be the Hermit. And the key phrase that I picked out for that is, sometimes it's important to step back from the noise and chaos of the world around you. And the key word that I picked out for that one was introspection. And for me, that just really spoke to what I need to do for me. Remember, this is a self-care reading, so what I need to do for me is I need to just take a step back. So that, for me, that's a perfect card. A perfect reminder that I need to spend some time in that introspection, and I really need to just kind of give myself some space and some time to breathe. So the last card was Justice, and the key phrase or key meaning that I tapped into for that was actually kind of a combination of two thoughts in the guidebook. It's a period of deep contemplation. That was the first little bit that I copied out. And then the second part is, it's important to understand that the actions you take and the words you speak and the thoughts you have shape your reality. That one I'm paraphrasing a little bit because it was quite a long notation. And the key word I picked out was wisdom. And so for me, this just ties back into that, like, I need to remember that I'm manifesting my own reality. And if I'm constantly going and I'm never taking that break, like, I'm not going to get that good balance that I seek, right? So that's what I'm going to be looking for. And I just wanted to take a quick moment to throw this in and record it for the video because it was really important, and it really shows me that sometimes I need to work with a deck to connect with it. So overall, I think it's a really lovely deck. I do wish it was borderless like the Moonchild. I mean, to me, it doesn't compare to the Moonchild. The Moonchild is still, you know, of course, it's one of my favorite decks. I think that we can see, you know, how much she has developed as an artist, and I think that's really quite lovely to be able to see that progression through the decks and through the artwork. It's quite lovely, actually. But this one still remains my favorite, of course. But I do quite like this deck, and I'm interested to work with it a little bit more and get to know it a little bit better. Thank you for joining me today. You will find links for the decks featured here in the description box below. I hope you enjoyed this video and will join me again soon for more creative tarot for an inspired life.